So one of the reasons why land acknowledgements are so important is because in a way, we are giving back a sense of identity by honoring the original caretakers of the land that you're in. So I challenge everybody who is not from Calgary to find out where they're from and who are the original caretakers of that land. So here in Calgary, Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, this is Blackfoot territory. So we acknowledge our Blackfoot friends. So I'll go through it once and then I'll do it for you. So it's kind of, so we start with our 7 fingers because we are in Treaty 7. So today we acknowledge our Treaty 7 friends. So this is sign language for friends. Where the Blackfoot meets at Elbows Bend. Soon came the Sutana from the Beaver clan, and that's the beaver's tail for people that are wondering what that means. And then the Iskia and Nakota in the mountain lands. Last but not least, so we do the infinity sign because that is the symbol on the Métis flag. Last but not least, Métis people from Region 3. Together, we're all treaty people here in Calgary. So see how fun that was and interactive? So we're gonna do it again. This time, I'm not gonna pause. I'll go through it right from beginning to end. And I hope that you guys are practicing with me and you could always replay it and do it again. So when you come to story time at the library, you'll be able to do it. Okay, so let's get started. Today, we acknowledge our Treaty 7 friends, where the Blackfoot meets at Elbows Bend. Soon came the Sutana from the Beaver clan and the Iskia Nakota in the mountain lands. Last but not least, Métis people from Region 3. Together, we're all treaty people here in Calgary. I hope Charlie liked that. Thanks.
I like that Charlie's wearing a Calgary Flames jersey too. That's funny.
I'll just pop up that survey for now. I will just probably be popping in and out of windows as people mentioned resources. So yeah. Brent, I really like that one. I really like that there is the kind of like that explanation at the beginning of it. I think that's great.
You know, when we talk about, when we talk about land acknowledgement, you really can, there's so much rich conversation that's going to come out of any land acknowledgement. Maybe that's one that, Amber, if we go back to your comment about, some of the wording within that acknowledgement Rocky View has, maybe that's an area to bring to a professional platform and just say, so let's explore this more. And, there's always going to be barriers that people are going to put in place. And there's always, you're not going to please everybody, right? And so I think we have to keep that in the back of our mind that nothing is perfect, but we still need to honor this work. These are calls to action, and there are 11 of them specific to education that have been created from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And so, there's a lot of history. This isn't just something that we're demanding or insisting that you do. It's really based on a lot of research and a lot of evidence, that has happened in Canadian history. So I guess you need to frame it in that way, that these are calls to action, and they're very important that we honor them, right? Good. Any questions? I see, and forgive me, I can see a small screen, so I'm going to pop in here. I've got these old eyes. Let's see. Yes, I really appreciate, this reconciliation journey that that you continue to take. And you might, read this document in a year from now and go, oh, wow, I've really changed, or I've really grown, in my own knowledge. And so that certainly is, this is good. This is good conversation to have, even as a staff, if you want a place to start around the work. It's just, what does reconciliation mean to you, right? And so have each person share if they want, but really, if you want to, and if you want a platform to start the work, this is a really good place to start it. And it's really certainly one I constantly use when I'm presenting is let's unpack this first. What does reconciliation mean to you? And moving forward, how can we support the journey of reconciliation? Because it's a personal journey. It's not one that we are all going to take together and all arrive in the same place at the same time. And so it really is, you know, a good place to start. And it gives you kind of a really sound and a good grounding as to where some maybe teachers are coming from within this work, right? So some people will be on board and, you know, will be further along in this journey of reconciliation, and where our others haven't even started, you know, to start this process. So any questions? I see some faces from last week, and I'm glad that you're back. And as I've said earlier on, I'm not keeper of all knowledge. And so, but if you have anything that's really resonated with you from conversation from last week, certainly bring that forward, and we'll try to resolve some or guide you with resources in the area.
I'm wondering what I'm trying to think of some age appropriate ways of doing this in my classroom. So I feel like maybe the older kids might have a deeper understanding of what reconciliation means. And I'm wondering if you have any feedback or kind of like a guide to introducing it to the younger kids. So it's because there's a lot of raw material in there. And I feel like some of that is important to know. And perhaps some of it is maybe too much for them, but I'm just not really sure where that line is.
Mhm. I think, you know, I think, and if I can incorrectly saying this, when we think about reconciliation, you know, our mind immediately goes to residential schools. And certainly that's part of it. It's certainly an attribute to the ways in which we, you know, journey in reconciliation. But it's not the only place to start. And I know that those, there are really harsh and awkward pieces in reconciliation, and that's great, because really what it does is it challenges you. But we certainly don't want to start with reconciling in this work in a negative way, in that we don't all live in deficit. There's lots of great things going on across Canada. I love the one CBC really does a great job of honoring some of you know, the youth and the Indigenous. So I'm such a big proponent of, I think it's just titled Indigenous, CBC Indigenous role models, and they're just young. One of them is Autumn Pelche, and certainly she, oh yeah, there it is right there, 20 plus Indigenous role models and ideas. I think that might be, and there's videos that are embedded into these role models and their communities. And so that's a good place to start with reconciliation. It doesn't always have to be a reflection of the horror around residential schools, right? You know, we have to generously share that there are rich and vibrant communities and role models across Canada from coast to coast to coast. So I love Autumn Pelche. She's a water keeper. She's got a great history and background and does a phenomenal job.
Which, did I click on the right one?
You know, you started, but I don't know where it's going to, but certainly it's CBC. Yeah, there you go. I guess it just didn't load. So there are some great pieces in this site. So if I can get, you know, Diamond, if I'm not sure what grade level you teach, but certainly it's a good place to start when we talk about the ways in which we look at reconciliation. Does that help you?
That's awesome. Thank you. Because I do think it's, you know, it's important to know why the need for reconciliation is there, right? But yes, kind of bringing more of those role models and that positive aspect to it is great. So that's.
Yeah, there's some great things happening across the country, and I love that. You know, nobody's going to listen to an old veteran seasoned teacher like me, but what people want to connect to, particularly in the grade 9 to 12 age group, are youth, right? And there are some great role models across Alberta, for an example. So that might be a good place for you to start as well.
Donna, I actually have a question related to that. So like traditionally I teach grade 8 at a middle school, and it can be a tricky years in grade 8, like when we're picking novels and stuff, because we do have elementary age children in the school. So I find it difficult to, when looking for novels, like Indigenous novels by Indigenous authors, a lot of times I'll kind of get it, like I'll get my choice blocked because of, PG-13 material, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Like, and it has been something that I have tried to push back on. And is that the kind of thing where you just need to continue to push? Or what do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah. I guess it depends on leadership and ways they support you. Really, is what it comes down to. I remember once teaching grade 7, 8 junior high at Tsuut'ina Nation, and my leader, my administrator at the time, because I was in the middle of ordering books for various novel studies, and I wanted to do Anne Frank, and sorry, I really resonated with that particular story, and she just shot it right down. And I was really quite surprised. She said, I think you have to look at your context and where you are currently and what you're teaching and what you want to teach. And so I had to step back and really process that. I thought, wow, I guess so. As a teacher, you just you build resources and ways in which to support your learners and teaching. And so I ended up going with a different novel study, and truthfully I can't even remember what it was, but it was just something that stuck out in my mind. And this is like about 25 years ago where this came into play for me, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's almost like the flip of what you're saying. There was some really good, I think of all the wonderful parts and pieces of that Anne Frank story, and even that Jewish story where in a lot of ways with Indigenous people we've lived the same sort of narrative, right, where we've been marginalized, and so I thought it was a great parallel to introduce. And at the time, I guess there weren't many novels out there, that supported that Indigenous perspective. Now, certainly that there's far more. And so I know if you go to Empowering the Spirit, and usually what I try to do in every presentation is I put K-12 resources and literacy seed kit. It really is where I want you to go to. And so there's some great books in there that have already been vetted and that are on the First Nations Métis Inuit branch of recommended resources to share with your grade 9 to 12 learners, or 5 to 12, or whatever grade you're teaching. So if you go into the search engine, this is how I always find it.
Right. I
And
think
it's
we did it last time, but there might be a space in it.
yeah, literacy seed
Oh,
kit.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in there, and I think I don't know, gosh, there's just so many different genres that you'd have to really do some in-depth research to look at some of the novels that are there, and that might be a good place for you to start, Alicia.
For sure. Yeah. No, thank you.
There's some graphic books too, and I think Randy Bottle is one of the authors of it. And I don't know if you know Randy. I'm sure you probably do because he's done a lot of work with Rocky View, right?
I don't, but I actually was watching when Rick Audio put the land acknowledgement video together. There's actually a series, and there's one. It was actually really endearing to watch, but it was grade 3, 4 students at A. Bowers, I think. And they did a lot of work with him. We can watch it later. if we
Yeah.
have time in the session.
You know, The Middle of Everywhere is a good book as well. I really liked it. I remember looking at that in depth and going, oh, this looks like a really great study. So that might be something for you to do, is to take a look at some of the books and just some ideas, projects,
Sure.
activities. And of course, there's links to all of them. So
For sure.
yep. Good. Any other questions?
I was just going to say, I went on to that literacy seed kit and onto my local library, because they're still doing, like, you can reserve books and go and pick them up. And so I did get a couple from there and they look really good. And this one, Alicia, was not on the literacy seed kit, but it came up. You know, when you search, it'll give you similar books. And it says that it's for grade 4 to 7, but it does have to do with missing, like a missing Indigenous person who was adopted. But it seems to me like, and I haven't read it yet, but it seems to me like it's more about the happy side of things and how they are reuniting. And it's like they're trying to solve this mystery. So I don't know if it would be appropriate. Like I said, I haven't read it before, but
No, thank
a
you.
lot of those books on there were really good. Like this one looks really great.
Mhm.
The Ida Trail.
Yeah. And so, you know, I know that this seed kit, and it does say right on there that Edmonton Public School and was it Northland School Division that you know, created this seed kit, and I think they've done a fabulous job. And so I think that I think, yeah, you're right. Towards the end there, it does get higher in the grade level. So, and I know that if you look in your and I think, did Chelsea Jackson have a reservoir of books that she gathered for the division at one time, or and maybe Rick Gaudio has access to that, I'm not sure. But I know when I was in the position, I had created something very similar to this, but that was 100 years ago now. So I don't know where any of this ended up, but certainly Rick might be a person to contact
Sure.
for books that are um, uh, that have been culminated to support learners in your division. So
Donna, can I ask, if you're doing kind of something longer term, or, like when I taught grade 4, I often read Fatty Legs and would spend some
Yeah.
time with it. I regularly, or at least a handful of times, had First Nations families who did not want their children to participate,
yeah.
based on background, or even just based on wanting that learning to come from their family. So do you always kind of send out, if it's not just a news article or something that comes up on the fly, but if it's something you kind of know that you're going to do and it's going to be some time in your classroom, do you always send it out first and then just kind of allow parents at least the chance to respond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say there are certain nations in the area, I'm not going to point anybody out, but they don't want that taught to their child because they haven't even, resolved or are grieved or healed in their own family. So it is very, it can become very sensitive. And I get that. I understand that totally. But here's a great opportunity for you to craft a letter, just sharing with your student family, and just say, hey, you know what, these are some of the things that we're going to study throughout the year. It might have content that might be sensitive. It might it might really hit hard for some families, but and if it is an issue, by all means communicate with you the reasons why, and then I guess try to resolve it from there, because this is some of the content that we talk about, and I don't want to say, that it's done flippantly, because it's not. We're trying to honor the work, but we have had a lot of parents come back and go, I don't want that taught to my son or my granddaughter or whatever, because of that intergenerational trauma, or that they haven't had, any healing in their own family. So it can be really sensitive, and you have to be really careful, right? So I hope that helped you, Grayson. But you know, I'm such a huge. You hear me talk about Under One Sun. They have these template letters that they built into the program, which you send home to your parent, your guardians, and you just say, hey, this is what we're doing, and you just grab one here. They worded so nicely, and I was like, this is a great letter to send home when you're about to start into this work, right? Around reconciliation or historical perspectives or anything like that. But there is a letter that's built in, and they've done a really nice job with making sure that parents and families are aware of. Of course, I'm not going to find it when I need it, right?
That's okay. I can go looking. That's helpful.
I have it right here, and if you want me, I'll read it to you. It says,
Sure.
Dear parent guardian, you know, our class is working with this series called Under One Sun, and we're going to focus on Indigenous people across Canada. So the students will learn about Indigenous ways of life, beliefs, history through a series of resources. And so it says your child may come home with some of the resources, and that you could read together or, you know, relate to it, the activities. And so it does talk, it kind of gives you a bit of a ways in which to support your child, and really it's done in a positive way. This isn't going to talk about full-on trauma in residential school. It's going to talk about ways in which we can support your child in learning about reconciliation. And so that I think they've done a really nice job with the wording, because you have to be really careful with that. And thank you for that, because it's certainly something in the back of my mind that, you know, as a teacher in many grade levels where I've had to, you know, deal directly with parents, and even on the nations that I've worked in, about some of the content that I chose to teach. And sometimes it went really well, and other times it didn't. So, you know, it's always best to build that relationship, as we always say, and communication is key, right? And just even picking up the phone and going, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what we're doing, and I just wanted to introduce myself, and make it a positive phone call rather than a reaction, you know, right?
Sure. Thanks, Donna.
Yeah, did that help? You give me that? Good, okay.
Yeah, nice to have a letter to even look at. Sometimes it's easier to work from someone else's language, so that's great.
Absolutely. And then just, you know, kind of make it your own. So, because I know that there are parents in particularly Rocky View School Division that, you know, we had to support when it came to this work, because they wanted nothing to do with residential schools or even the conversations in their classroom, right? Yeah, and you had to honor that. And I think if you look at our history, you know, and it's absolutely, they have absolutely every right to not want to have that taught.
Brent has a question in the chat, wondering about math and science from an Indigenous perspective. So he's covered salt and freshwater systems. Do you want to talk, Brent? Like, I can read your thing in the third person, or
I'd love to hear Brent talk.
Sure, I can take care of it. So I'm in the final, like basically the final week and a bit of my fresh and saltwater systems unit. One area where I've been really struggling with is addressing Indigenous perspectives in like math and science. With literacy, I feel like there's, I don't want to say easy avenues, but there's greater avenues to really engage and really bring it in. With science and math, I'm finding it really difficult to really bring in these connections and really form these connections in there. Do you have any, I guess, any recommended approaches on how we can address that or bring it in for just to kind of support it? Like our fresh and saltwater systems unit, I took it from a more natural perspective, so I figured that would have been a good way to really bring in especially Indigenous ways of knowing and bringing that in. I just have no idea really how to go about doing it.
Yeah. Well, just as you're talking, I'm thinking about all the things that I know I've done over this time in the work. But here's a good connection for you when you talk about, the freshwater systems, and that's where you bring somebody such as Autumn Peltier's vision into your into your resources, because she is a water keeper and she's a knowledge keeper around the water, and the girl is phenomenal. And this is that young role model that I just shared with you. So she started doing this work at a really young age, and so she she's recognized internationally as a water keeper and does phenomenal work. So that might be one way to embed a bit of knowledge systems into that work. And, I have to say, Brent, that sometimes we look at this work and we look at what's a great unit I can support this work in, that I can, teach, or some resource. And sometimes it's just one lesson at a time, or one shared story, or a video such as Autumn Peltier. She does there is a video with CBC that shares her journey as a water keeper, and how she got to meet Prime Minister Trudeau and asked him when he started that he take this work seriously. And he said he would, but I don't know if he's upheld that. But we just have to look at our First Nations communities across Canada and look to see how many really actually have running water, or fresh water, or water that's not been contaminated or polluted. So that might be an avenue that you could certainly take or embed within your science units on water and fresh water. So the other thing too is I'm such a, let's see. I love this book. It's titled Land-Based Education, and it's all about embracing the rhythms of the earth from an Indigenous perspective. And although it's Northern Cree, it's actually from the area which I grew up. It's Northern Saskatchewan, and it's Dr. Herman Michel, and he does such an incredible job with supporting learning in the seasons and the different lands around, and ways in which you can to support learning from this perspective. And he actually, there's even in here teaching strategies that you could use. The other one is Indigenous and Scientific Ways of Knowing. And this is by Pearson Education. It's a great book, and highly recommend that you invest in it, because there's some great ideas in there. Instructional Approaches. Obviously, I've got it flagged. Just different ways that you can honor some of the Indigenous knowledge that, and the Western pedagogical pieces that are, really that you want to weave them in together, right? So one's not more dominant than the other, but rather, you share it in a story or a video, or somebody's a journey in reconciliation, such as Autumn Peltier. So does that help you?
That really does. What was the what was the second resource?
Yeah, what was the second book? And I'll pop a link in the chat. Bridging Cultures.
Yeah.
I love that we are able to record my Googling methods to find things.
Thank you.
Google's not always your friend. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a great book. And like I said, this one, I don't know if you caught that one as well.
Yeah, I did Google that one after a couple tries.
Yeah, and there's just so many different resources. But, at one point in time, I did offer a series of workshops on scientific ways of knowing, to support math and science teachers. I can't remember the exact title, but I did it 2 years ago, and we had over 50 people such as yourself come in, and the attendance was awesome. And so what I did though was, rather than speak from my own perspective, which I am not a science math person, but I had various knowledge keepers and elders come in and speak to that perspective of Indigenous upbringing and the traditional knowledge that they have, and the transfer that they had with their own knowledge and into the Western ways was phenomenal. They did such an incredible job, and And certainly maybe that's something that we can revisit in the future, because I know that's always a question around how do I do this in a math and science contented area? And it actually is far easier than you think, but you have to deepen your knowledge when it comes to this work, and understand ways in which you can do it more effectively, right? So
I was going to say it's probably a combination of, and Alicia can speak to this. Me just vastly overthinking, overthinking things. That's definitely a character weakness of mine, where I just overthink things. So it's probably very easy to bring it into there. I'm just probably overthinking it, but having links to resources and actually being able to read up on it, that's very much appreciated, because I literally had no idea where to start, besides just a Google search of Indigenous ways of knowing, and then science. So having a way of kind of like pinpointing or focusing it down really helps.
Yeah, it's a really good read. I actually was one of the consultants that edited part of this book, and it was fascinating. This is probably about going on 10 years ago, and it was in the role I had with Rocky View as an Indigenous lead at the time. So I was really quite fortunate to be part of this book, and there's such great nuggets that it's just an incredible book. I really enjoyed it. And so this one I came across in a website last year, and I ordered it. It was like, I don't know, $19, whatever. And I got it within a day, and it's just been really very helpful with my own approach from a Cree perspective, teaching from with a land-based education program, because really this is what people want to do, right? And there are so many great ways to do it and embed it. So take a look at these resources. I highly recommend that you buy them and just read them from cover to cover, and deepen your knowledge about that foundational knowledge that we really want people to apply, right? Any other questions? It's I see 11:59, and as I shared with Alicia and Amber before, it's amazing how when you're really passionate about this work, time just flies. So this conversation is far different from the other conversation we had, is it not? We talked about the past system, and that was really an emotional journey for me. If you ever get an opportunity to watch that video from the National Film Board, it really does lay some great foundation around the assimilation of Indigenous people. It's a great video. I challenge you to watch it without crying.
I was gonna say something. Oh, I'm just, if everyone, and I can forward this out, I was just gonna see if I could find that CRC course, Donna, the e-course, because I did have a link for it somewhere. I'm gonna stop.